Welcome back to Maximum Lawyer Live. I'm Tyson Mutrux, and today I'm talking about something that most of us probably go through at some point in our careers, unless you are just a true solo and you plan on staying a solo forever, and that is hiring associates. It is something that I understand, that I completely get. It is a very difficult process for some of us. It is, I think for most of us, I think actually finding good talent is really good. But that's actually not finding the talent's not what I'm talking about today. Today, I actually want to talk about what reasonable expectations are when it comes to onboarding the attorneys. That is where I think there are a ton of failures. And it's really a failure expectations. That is probably the biggest part of this, is that there is a massive failure of expectations. And I think that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because I talked to a lot of attorneys, and the hire does not work out for one reason or another. And it usually happens very quickly. And that's usually because, or at least the seeds are planted very early, because the expectations of the hiring attorney are way too high for what they should expect of the associate themselves. Okay. And if you think about just generally, not just in law firms, but actually in all companies, 50% of employees leave within 18 months. Okay. So think about that. 50% of employees leave within 18 months. That's an insane number. That is an absolutely insane number. So the deck is already stacked against us. Okay? It really is. And so our onboarding has to be on point. It really does. We also have to have the right expectations of our people. And one of the fundamental misunderstandings comes down to output versus capacity. Okay. So what you're doing is you're actually buying future capacity. Okay? You're not buying instant capacity. Okay. You're not buying instant output. Okay? You're hiring for something in the future. That's a really important thing. When you are hiring, you're not hiring for something. It's like you're hiring an answering service, and the answering service is going to be able to instantly get up and going and start answering the phone, right? That's not what you're doing. You're hiring an employee that has to learn about your core values, and it's got to learn about your systems, and they've got to learn about how you do certain things versus how they used to do certain things. So they have to unlearn some things. There is, especially when it comes to attorneys, usually we're having them do a lot of things. Okay, we're having them do. They're responsible for many things. Just if you think about one of our litigation attorneys, like they're having to, if they don't have any experience with it, they're having to learn this for the first time, or they're having to learn it the way we do things. Okay, how do you conduct depositions at our firm? We do ours a very specific way. That's why we put them through a very specific deposition training. How do you deal with written discovery? Like we deal, I'll give you a prime example of the way we might deal with written discovery versus another firm. There are some people that have joined our firm, and they had worked at a firm where you object to everything. We take a completely different approach. We say that is a waste of time. It's completely a waste of time. We object to the things that only we think are objectionable, and otherwise we don't object to it. That's our approach. Okay? Other firms, other attorneys take a completely different approach. I don't believe in pointless fights. It's just the reality of it. Let the other firms waste their time doing those things. That's the whole thing for me. So they have to learn depositions. They have to learn written discovery, negotiation skills, pleadings. So actually, like pleadings practice, writing. Responding motions for summary judgment. Like there's all these different things that they have to do. They have to learn. Okay, and I just named a few. Right? There's many more. and to fully expect them to step into a position. Because it's funny, I talk to so many people and they're asking, well, how long's your onboarding process? And just like the basic stuff, it's 2 weeks. Like just the very basic learning systems, going through our company manual, which is on Zoho People, like all of that. It's 2 weeks, and I can tell you who because we can track progress on each one, who's gone through it and all that. We have like a whole onboarding course that we put people through. If you've kind of skipped through it, I know you're not going to do well. Okay, but to me, I wouldn't say the longer the better, but the deeper into the 2 weeks that they go, the better usually. So, but I've talked to several attorneys where they are, one day of onboarding, and I just, it's crazy to me that you would expect someone to on day 2 go straight into and start doing the job. Like, how is that even? That's not even possible. If you think about yourself, like stepping into a completely brand new role, new people, you don't even know everyone's names, right? You don't know everyone's names. You don't know what their positions are, what they do, all of that. And then you're expected to do a job on files that you are just looking at, you're trying to get up to speed on. Imagine, so whether you do, personal injury or estate planning, whatever it is, but imagine you're handed a file for the first time. Okay, you're handed a file. It's not from the beginning, but you're getting it in the middle of it. Like, how long is it going to take you to get up to speed on that file? Okay, and then multiply that by the number of files, and that's just learning the file. That's not even learning how to do the work. That's learning how to do actually what's on that matter. So if we kind of start with that basic fundamental understanding of output versus capacity. So when they first join the firm, their output is going to be very little. Okay, so they're going to have capacity later, but their output is going to be very, very, very low at the end. At least it should. So if you kind of think about, okay, what is reasonable in the first 30 days, right? What is something we can actually reasonably expect them to know? All right. So learning firm systems, and sort of the case flow, right? Understanding so whether it's case flow or matter flow, right? If you're doing transactional stuff, so if it's a matter, like just understanding the flow is a really important part of it. So sitting them down and saying, hey, this is how we do things from start to finish, and actually having the conversation. And you should really, if you can, mix in face-to-face and virtual, and so all the audio, visual, in person. So reading, there's several studies on what helps people retain information, and mixing in those different things is really, really important. But so learning firm systems and case flow, understanding the decision-making structure. All right. And I encourage you to flatten the decision-making processes, structure as much as you can, meaning letting as many people at the lower levels make decisions as possible. Really encourage that, but that's another topic for another day. But really understanding the decision-making structure, that's part of what they should be figuring out in the first 30 days. And by the way, if you want to create some sort of template out of this where, okay, you create your own checklist. Okay, did they do this in the first 30 days? Fine, feel free, go ahead and do that, because I'm giving you what I think is reasonable, and you could sort of use this as a benchmark for whether or not they're on track. Also in the first 30 days, observing how, what quality, how quality is defined, what makes, what makes a good case, but then also what means, how do we know we're doing a good job on this file? All right, so how is that defined? And they should be asking lots of questions. Okay, so if they're not asking lots of questions, you need to be prodding and encouraging them to ask lots of questions. Sometimes people, there's lots coming at them and they kind of freeze. So it's not that they don't have questions and they don't want to ask questions, is that they can't think of those questions at the time. So give them a notepad or tell them to write it on their computer and say, listen, I understand that you might have questions. As you go, I want you to write all of these down so we can address these in between. Okay. And you don't have to be doing all the training, by the way. I think you know that by now, but so someone else could be answering these questions. But just make sure that they are writing these down because they're going to have questions. And if they're not writing them down, they're not going to remember to ask them. So make sure that that's important. So a structured onboarding is really important. I can't stress that enough. Having a structured onboarding, really, really important to success. Okay. So those are some of the things to really understand the first 30 days. Okay. And I think if you are here's some unreasonable expectations in the first 30 days. Having them make decisions on their own, probably unreasonable. Okay. Unless it's a really basic decision, but having full independent decision making in the first 30 days, not reasonable. Okay. Anticipating, this is a big one, anticipating unwritten preferences. Okay. So anticipating that they're going to understand what should and shouldn't be done, like the unwritten rules. You can't expect that. You just can't. And then here's the one you're going to hate to hear. I'm sorry, but it's true. Don't expect some sort of meaningful reduction in your workload. Your expectation should be you're going to have an increase in your workload at the beginning, and then it'll start to taper off over time. In the 30 days, you should expect zero meaningful reduction in your workload. That's just how it is. Okay. And then what should be happening in those first 30 to 90 days? And by the way, in the first 30 days, it's okay to hand them some projects and say, hey, work on these things, and then you will supervise it. Completely reasonable to do because they're learning the job. As long as someone is looking over their shoulder and actually saying, no, we do things this way, or great job. Positivity is a really powerful tool, by the way. I use it on a regular basis. I also use it whenever I'm coaching, and I'm talking about both coaching people in the guild, I guess in the association. I almost slipped up. In the association, which if you haven't heard, we've renamed the guild the Maximum Lawyer Association, the association. It's called the Association by Maximum Lawyer, actually, and we'd love to have you. But whether I'm coaching people in the association or if I am actually coaching one of our kids' teams, positivity, very, very powerful tool. They use it in aviation too, where they want to get the confidence built up. Is what they want. Oh, you're doing a really good job there. Like, I love how you're keeping the plane level. Like so you highlight the positive things they're doing. So not the results. It's actually, if you look at the product goals versus process goals. So you compliment the process and you highlight the process versus, say, oh, you did a great job on that, getting that settlement. The way you negotiated that, awesome job, excellent work. So that's what I'm talking about. But back on track here. So what should be happening in those first, when it comes to the first 30 to 90 days, that's where you're really getting into that supervised execution, where they're doing these tasks and then you're supervising it. So they're starting to make some of these independent decisions. They're starting to do things, but it's still being supervised. All right. I think after about 30 days, you can start to see them draft some motions. You might even have them draft some very basic pleadings in the first 30 days, but especially if they've got years of experience, I think that's reasonable, but still, you're going to be supervising these. These are things you're going to be supervising. Discovery, I think after about 30 days, so those 30 to 90 days, starting to draft some discovery and everything. And then maybe sort of handle some pretty narrow, well-defined tasks. I think that's reasonable. And this is where they're going to start to understand the why and not just the how. So here's why we do these things. And that way they can start to explain these things to other people as to why we're doing it this way and not that way. That's where they're really starting to get that deeper understanding. Okay. That's where they're starting to see this is the way we do things here. I think some unreasonable expectations in the first 30 to 90 days is expecting them to do things fast, expecting them to exercise perfect judgment on a file, and really taking over full ownership of files. That's not a reasonable expectation. They can take over a couple files maybe, but really have to dip their toe into things. You're having them fully take over all the files, not super reasonable at that point, just not. Okay. And then I'd say, after around 6 months or so, I think what you can start to expect then is competence within all the firm systems. Okay. You're still going to have probably some errors, but you're going to have fewer rewrites, fewer corrections at that point. They're going to be able to routinely spot issues. So issue spotting, really important. They're going to be able to identify those at around the 6 month mark. And then ownership of certain categories of work. So I can do this. I can do written discovery. I can take that on. I can take on depositions. Like these are things I can do at this point. So you're taking on maybe not all of the role, but you're taking on certain categories of the role. So I don't think you're fully going to expect that they're going to be into all of those things at that point. Don't at this point expect owner level judgment. Okay. I have one attorney who her parents own a big business. And so she has a pretty good understanding, and she's had a pretty good understanding of that owner level judgment, but most people don't have that. Okay. It's just one of those things where some never get it, but expecting them to have that same level of judgment that you have, it's not reasonable. Okay. It's a different view. I don't think you can really expect them to understand at 6 months that risk management, you know what I mean? Where, like on a personal injury case, all right, maybe we shouldn't take on that case because, liability might be good, but our risk is really high on this, and here's why. So maybe not take that case. Or, you know what? Risky case, but the upsides are really good on this. Liability's tough, but you know what? It's worth taking it on just in case. I don't think you can expect them to have those instincts at that point. So, and then another one is, I don't think you should expect them to protect your margins. Okay. It's a little easier for them to spend that money. And so having them, by 6 months, they're not going to learn. They're probably not going to know maybe we should spend money on this or not. Many times people see the money coming in and not the money going out. So they're not going to think to protect the margins. They're just not. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about skill gaps versus expectation gaps. Okay. So, and this is a little bit different from what we're talking about, because skill gaps can be different based on their experience when you hire them. Right. So this can be a little different. So what's interesting too is where I've struggled a little bit, if I'm being honest, is we hire people with experience and we expect the skill. So our expectation's high, but their skill isn't nearly as high as what we were expecting. And I know I'm not alone in that, where, if you've been out for 4 years, I fully expect that you have a lot. And if you tell us, because we had this on multiple occasions where they're in litigation roles, been doing it for 4 years. So my expectations are pretty high, but then there's a big skill gap. So we've seen that on several occasions. And so that could be an issue. And that's more on us than it is on them, probably, where we've got to ask more questions. So when some of the things you have to do is you have to document your standards. Okay. and then make sure where you model that for them, and then you reinforce it. So you have all your standards documented, like so. You use job scorecards, and then you go into more detail when it comes to your office manuals and everything, and then you show them how to do it, right? So you tell them what they're supposed to do, you show them how to do it, and then you watch them do it, and then you correct any mistakes, or you support any, you give them positive reinforcement whenever they do it right. So that's really how you should be handling those situations. Okay. That being said, so one of the things I've kind of left out to this point is I had a pause because I was thinking about Jason Self. What he talks about is I think another one of the major errors that we've not talked about yet is that the ability of the brain to be able to manage one thing at a time. And what we do is we throw all of these different things at the person, and we fully expect them to just absorb it all. And the more you can minimize how much you're throwing at them at one time, the better. The more they're gonna to learn, the faster they're gonna be able to learn. Okay. Makes me think about the Brene Brown quote for some reason, that the clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So the clearer you can make it for them, the simpler you can make it for them. That's the kind way of doing things. The unkind way is you have unclear messaging, you throw a bunch at them, and not the best way of doing things. So if you've noticed that you're having associates leave, or if you're having to terminate associates, okay, some of this may have to do with you're having moving targets. That creates a lot of anxiety and paralysis. Okay, it really does. If they've got moving targets, the phrasing we use is that you got to know where the goalposts are. Okay, so make sure they know where the goalposts are. Don't move the goalpost. That is a really, really important part of this. If there's role ambiguity, it is one of those leading predictors of early departure. It really is, where if people don't know what they're supposed to do, okay, or if they don't know what the targets are, they're probably going to leave. It's just what's going to happen. Okay, so make sure you define all of that as much as possible. Okay, so make sure that you are taking as the owner, okay, or whoever is in charge of the onboarding. Okay, they've got to take responsibility of defining what success looks like at the 30-day mark, the 90-day mark, the 180-day mark, and then thereafter. Okay, so you got to have a training infrastructure. You're gonna have to have some sort of feedback cadence. So you have to have some sort of feedback loops built in. Okay, having those things is absolutely important. Okay, because I mean, failed onboarding, and this is something you got to take on as an owner. Failed onboarding is a leadership failure. Okay? Plain and simple. Okay, if you don't have good onboarding, it's on you as the leader. Okay, so that's something that you need to take complete ownership on. Okay. All right. So if you think about it, if we're going to break down like the associate model, okay, the mental model. Okay. So if you kind of think about, there's really kind of three stages. The associate sort of starts as an observer. They're just in a room. That's why you really shouldn't expect them to do a lot of output. They're just kind of there. Okay. And then there's sort of like this assisted operator where they're kind of helping out here and there, and then eventually they turn into that independent contributor. Okay, so there's really three stages. Each stage has different expectations. Each stage has different problems. But if you expect stage 3 behavior from someone that's in stage 1, that's on you. It's not on them. Okay. That's on you. It's not on them. But so if you want instant relief with something, hire an independent contractor. Okay? That's what those types are for. But if you want some sort of long-term leverage, you need to accept that short-term friction. Okay, you really have to understand that, and you have to have your expectations right. Um, Onboarding and really hiring is planting the tree. Okay, so you can have that later capacity. Okay. All right. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully, you got something from this episode. Hopefully, I've shifted some of your expectations in a way where um, you do a better job of onboarding and you do a better job of retaining your people. So that's my goal. But have a great week, everybody. We will see you. Make sure you check out the association with Maximum Lawyer. Go to maximumlawyer.com. Make sure you check out Becca's list to find out the best vendors and the worst vendors. But to find the best vendors for you, go to beccaslist.co. And hopefully some of you will join us out in Phoenix, where we've got the Phoenix Mastermind. Make sure you go to Maximum Lawyer, maxlawevents.com. Sign up there. We would love to have you out there. It's going to be a great time. It's just going to be this may be the most exciting one that we've done, at least for me personally. So hopefully you make it out there. And so go to maxlawevents.com. But hey, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you.